Excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
WI10, is Kevin okay? Because I see his hand up already. WI10,
Yes.
is Kevin okay? I'm looking at his hand up. I wasn't for sure.
Yes. To address his question, just raise your hand when the item that you want to speak on comes up.
Guess I got 2 more minutes.
Madam Chair, the time is now 5 o'clock. You may begin.
Oh man, I hit something. Wait a minute. Maybe I lost it. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Wait a minute. Oh, wait a minute. I somehow lost. I'm trying to get back in. Oh. 1 second. Okay. Woo. Okay, I'm ready. Okay,
Maybe
good afternoon. Yeah, I'm ready. Good afternoon, everybody. This is a virtual Public Works and Transportation Committee meeting. Today is April the 5th, 5 p.m. Public Works and Transportation Committee. Would the committee members introduce themselves first?
Gray, First District.
Loretta Walsh, council member at large.
Nathan Field, 8th District.
Regina Fields, 5th District.
James Fidelis, City Council at Large.
Trippy Congo, President.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd just like everyone to know it is a little echo. So after you speak, give it a minute because it's a little reaction. Okay, first item, we have two resolutions tonight to speak on behalf of, which do not have to be voted out of committee. The first resolution is to approve the master license agreement between the City of Wilmington and New Singular Wireless PCS LLC for attachments to city-owned facilities. First, I'd like to say a couple of things before I ask anyone to speak in regards to this piece of resolution. A&T lease agreement with the City of Wilmington, the subject is of this resolution, will govern AT&T deployment of small cells existing for city infrastructures and city right-of-ways. Second, the agreement represents more than 1 year of a discussion and negotiating between the city and AT&T. And that's because it was a little pilot program down in Dover, I think, and they were just throwing a lot of these 5Gs up on poles down there. And then the next thing you know, the area wasn't getting paid for anything. So the City of Wilmington, we want to take our time and make sure we were doing it right so we can be upfront and make sure we were getting the funding we deserve. We didn't want a company to come around here and just throw a bunch of 5Gs up on every pole in Wilmington, and we didn't have any control of it. Thirdly, the administration and council have previously expressed the support of improving connectivity of all actual users of 5G technology in Wilmington. 5G technology will be more significant to improve our network. That's what it does. It improves things such as smartphones, Wi-Fi networks, and satellite communications, but enables technology to go further. We also appreciate the council's review of this historic resolution, which will present the first step towards Wilmington's 5G technology. And lastly, let me see, it's a 10-year agreement. I was looking for that part, but we can go back to that. Does anyone have any questions in reference to this resolution? Any council
Yes.
members?
I do.
James, okay, Councilwoman Walsh. Vice Chair, Councilwoman Walsh, could you please speak?
Thank you, Chair. The only question I have is on the fiscal impact statement, where it says that the amount will be $270 a year per pole per user. User being the company, correct?
Correct.
It's not that we get $270 for every client that is used through that company.
Oh, okay. That's a good question. Is someone on the line? I see where you're going. Is there someone on here to speak into regard to that?
I can speak to that. Rose Tassoni DiNardo from the Law Department. It is Councilwoman Walsh. It is it's a company. It's AT&T. It's per provider per user. It is not all of the AT&T's customers.
We could negotiate that. That-
Well,
That's a joke. You don't have to answer.
I know that
Would have been nice.
it would have been very nice.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's a good question. Thank you. You have any other questions right now, Councilwoman Walsh?
No, I don't. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Mr. Spadola, Councilman Spadola, do you have any questions?
Yes, I guess I have three, if that's okay.
Sure.
And I'll get them all out there, and then however you want to handle. First, I'm wondering how, if the public had an opportunity to comment on the aesthetics of the polls, or if AT&T has gotten any feedback on how the public views them. I'm also wondering what the total amount of polls is, if we have an estimate. And three, I know companies do this to the city a lot, but we're getting paid $270 per poll. Is it possible to get paid a percentage of the revenue as on top of that? And I know that's nitty gritty contract stuff, but I'm just wondering, we don't want to leave any money on the table. We'll be looking at these cells everywhere we go. So curious about that.
Okay, very good. Very good questions. Rose, would you like to answer that, or someone else?
Sure, I can answer that. So the first one, Councilman, you asked whether there was public comment on the aesthetics, or what the facilities will look like. So I want to say it's been probably 2 years or more. The city passed an ordinance that amended the code to provide more specifically for the small cells in the public rights of way. And pursuant to that ordinance, we then adopted a wireless manual, very detailed in terms of the process, and it speaks to the aesthetics and the concealment, which are a priority for the city. And at the time of the ordinance and at the time of the manual, there was the ability to comment publicly on that. At this point, what we have now are the agreements, and this just permits AT&T and other providers a license to come in and to put these facilities into the right of way, and this one this evening specifically onto city poles. They do still have to submit permits that go through the permitting process through Public Works. And then that process is governed by the manual. So the short answer to your question is yes, there was an opportunity for the public to comment. That opportunity was when the ordinance and the manual was enacted.
Thank you.
You're welcome. In terms of the number of polls, I will allow Kelly to correct me if I'm wrong. We believe at this point it's approximately 15 polls on city polls that we're speaking of. And in terms of the percentage of revenue, the answer is no. Unfortunately, this is really governed by the Federal Telecommunications Act. And how much we can charge in terms of fees and all of that is regulated, and it is limited to recouping the costs. And so the license agreement does just that. It attempts to recoup the city's costs in maintaining the public right-of-way and allowing these facilities to come into the right-of-way. And it's the same, that same principle runs through the manual and the ordinance to make sure that the city recoups the cost. It is not meant to be a revenue raising effort. It can't be because of the federal law.
Okay, thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilman Spadola. Do you have any more questions right now?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Councilwoman Fields. Do you have any questions?
Yes, Madam Chair, I have two.
Sure.
My first question is, okay, so you gave us the number of polls that they currently have. How many polls, how many polls are they asking for moving forward if they are? And then my second question is, if license prohibits them from, from that question that Councilman Spadola asked about as far as revenue, does it prohibit them from giving back to the community where the polls are being utilized? Or does that prohibit them from giving back to those communities where the polls are? And that's it. That's the only questions I have.
Would you like me to try and answer that?
Yes, please, because I didn't understand one of them. Go ahead.
Councilwoman Fields, we'll have to get back to you in terms of the potential number in the future. I'm not sure that is known at this time, but we can try and ascertain that for you. And in terms of giving back to the community, so to answer very directly your question, I don't think that the Federal Telecommunications Act prohibits AT&T from giving back to the community. I can tell you generally, this entire effort actually is to give back to the community in that it helps to facilitate communications throughout the city by increasing the capacity, if that answers your question.
Councilwoman Fields, did that answer one of your
Thanks. I'll take that. Thank you. Thank you, Rosa.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilwoman Fields. Do we have any other council members that have a question? Any other council members that have a question? Seeing none, is there anyone from the public that has a question relating to the agreement with AT&T, lease agreement with the city of Wilmington? Okay. With seeing no hands up.
Council Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I make a motion to move this onto our agenda.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. There was a member of the public that had his hands up, but he just put it back down. Okay, I'm sorry about that. I think. Okay, you may proceed.
That's okay. Thank you. Is there, okay, is there, let's start over. Is there a motion to move this out of committee?
So moved.
Second.
Sorry, is this a resolution?
Yeah, it's just a resolution.
Okay, so resolution doesn't require to be
We
voted.
realize that.
Oh, really?
We're just moving it onto the agenda.
Just moving it on the agenda.
What is the date for the agenda?
April the 15th. April the 15th.
Thank you.
So it has been moved and second for this resolution to be placed on the agenda for April the 15th. Thank you. So our next resolution is building a national park in Wilmington to connect and restore neighborhoods divided by installments of installing of I-90, Interstate I-95. Is there someone here to speak on behalf of this resolution?
Hi, Councilwoman Oliver, I'm here. Maria Cabrera, I am the sponsor, and I'm adding, well, I am the sponsor.
Okay, would you speak on behalf of this, Councilwoman Cabrera?
Sure. Well, this is an idea that the neighborhood, the people in the neighborhood have been floating around. It was also something that when they were holding the meetings on the construction of 95, that people came and spoke to. There was designs that were submitted and discussed at those meetings. I can't tell you that I'm an expert on the details of it, but I know that as the resolution in detail explains the history of when I-95 was built, what happened to our city. A lot of the businesses moved away. A lot of the people moved away, the homeowners. It just basically divided the city. Something that very similarly happened in Philadelphia, and they're actually addressing it by building a park over the interstate. So the idea is that now that we have this opportunity and kind of like a little bit of influx of money for infrastructure, that one of the ideas, which a lot of people embrace, was actually building this park over the interstate so that you have the connection, that divide that currently exists, that you would have a way to bring the neighbors together. Now, a lot of the neighbors on the west side have been doing some projects, painting the bridges, bringing folks together, getting people from West Center City, Cool Springs, Trinity vicinity, and the neighboring neighborhoods, Hilltop, to come together to reconnect, because there is a divide, and we see that. We see the fruition of this when you look at the poverty levels in these neighborhoods, even the crime levels. So sure, 95 is a great thing. It gets us here and there. We all were on it. I was just on it myself, rushing to get here on time. But this is one way, I guess, to right that wrong. You know, maybe there could have been another place to put it. I don't know. This happened 50 years ago. But it's certainly something that people are pushing for. The legislature is pushing for it. So I'm sponsoring, along with any other colleagues that want to jump on this resolution, to represent the voices of the community that feel that this would be a good idea. And second, to urge our congresswoman and our senators as to consider this idea, and that we use some of the infrastructure monies that we have to build it. And Philadelphia is scheduled to open their park in 2024. The resolution is very detailed. It has a lot of the history, the background of how we got to where we are, but most importantly, the hope that is being afforded on how we can move forward beyond this. So it's kind of like a once in a lifetime opportunity to do this with the construction that's going on now. I myself will tell you, I embrace it because I think it's a wonderful idea. I do question the health around having people at a park that's above the interstate, being that I live across the street from the interstate. If you hear any noise, it's the construction. And we breathe this in, and my son has been diagnosed with asthma, I forgot that I was diagnosed 2 years ago. I will blame 95 for that and the bad air quality here. So I'm a little hesitant about that. But again, it's a great idea. We don't have to spend all our time at this park if it is built. And there are people who want to speak to this that are invited to this meeting. But that's the basic gist of this resolution, to encourage our state legislatures as well as our delegation in Congress to support this.
Thank you, Councilwoman Maria. I see Councilwoman Walsh hand up.
Thank you, Council Chair. Number one, I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor. Please, if the sponsor will accept that. I call this the government's do-over. I was not here when all this happened, but when we look at a map, it is disgraceful what the federal government did to the city of Wilmington. They actually took a knife and ripped the heart out of the middle of this city. It wasn't people that moved away because of racial unrest in the city. This was the federal government came in and removed hundreds and hundreds of houses, which were entire families, which in many cases was an entire family. You know, parents and their children and grandparents who lived 2 blocks away, and aunts and uncles within the same area, and everybody knowing what parish they belong to and all that stuff. And, you know, it wasn't walking across the bridge, nothing divided them. And if you look at the map, it was very logical that they should have gone along the river, and they didn't. They chose to rip apart an urban area that, because it was after the Second World War and the Korean War and all that, people were naturally moving to the suburbs anyway. So they should have been doing things to retain our cities, and they didn't. So I think it would be very nice of them to do a do-over with us and at least help us to regain some of what we lost during that period. Jim Baker pushed something like this maybe about 12, 13 years ago, and they kind of called him, what was that guy's name on the Jetsons, the cartoon show? Where, you know, the people are flying around. Yeah, they kind of called him that. And he did have some really crazy things in what he was proposing, but part of his craziness was this bridge on top of 95. Philadelphia's getting it. They did the same thing to them. But again, we're the small city. Why not use us as their guinea pig to see how successful it could be? And so I think we should do everything to push our legislature, to push our congressional delegation to get the funding for us to have this done. I think it's a fabulous project. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Walsh, for the history. Thank you so much. I see Councilman Spadola's hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I would like to be added as a co-sponsor as well. And I echo Councilmember Walsh's strong sentiments. And if you read anything about the infrastructure plan that Joe Biden unveiled last week, he specifically mentions a neighborhood in Syracuse and a neighborhood in New Orleans that were torn apart by the highway, and is allocating money to fix some of those wrongs. So I don't see why we couldn't, you know, make our way right in there, considering, you know, reading about the Claiborne Express Highway in New Orleans. It seems very similar to our situation here with 95. And in New Orleans, I think they're trying to get the highway ripped down. We're not even asking for that. We're just asking for a little park. So this, you know, this is low hanging fruit relative to moving the highway. And Joe Biden's, you know, paying attention to what's going on in New Orleans, and I'm sure he's aware of this, and hopefully we can make something happen. So thank you, Councilwoman Cabrera, for putting this forward. And especially, you know, I've been involved in some of the meetings. I see Kevin Malloy on here. He's been a real proponent of it, pushing it on Facebook. And, you know, I thank Kevin as well for his work, and looking forward to hearing what he has to say on it as well. Thank you all.
Thank you, Councilman Spadola. Next, we have Councilwoman Fields.
Thank you, Councilwoman Chair. I'd just like to be added as a co-sponsor, and I'd like to thank Councilwoman Cabrera for bringing that up. As you know, that goes directly through my district. And, you know, my term is 95 may divide us, but it doesn't define us. So I think I know that a park would definitely benefit the 5th district as well as the city of Wilmington. So I appreciate the history lesson. I did read that article, Councilman Spadola, and I'm just thankful that everybody is that is a main focus, that, you know, we get something done with 95. Thanks so much. That's it, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Next, we have Councilwoman Darby.
Good evening. Do you guys hear me? Okay. Yes, I would like to be added as a co-sponsor. And I also want to say this is like the first step I think we can take to righting some wrongs from our past. And I just want to say thank you, Councilwoman Cabrera, for introducing this tonight.
Thank you, Councilwoman Darby. Next, we have President Ernest Trippy Congo.
Yes, thank you. I would like to be added as a co-sponsor. And do we have is there a cost associated with this?
Councilwoman Maria.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, yes, there is going to be a cost associated with it. And our hopes is that with some of the monies that are being allotted for improvements and infrastructure, especially with the plan that our President Biden is putting forward, I think that he too is trying to right the wrong of what happened here in Wilmington. And the funding, there is funding available. As far as cost analysis, I'm not sure that anything has been presented. I know that the state legislature has also been pushing for this. So there is some support behind this with some of the monies and infrastructure monies that the city is getting through the Recovery Act. We could tap into some of that if need be. But certainly that will be forthcoming. I can't tell you that I have those numbers in front of me, but I do appreciate the comments here this evening, yourself, Mr. President, and others jumping on board as a co-sponsor. And thank you, Councilman Walsh, for so eloquently expanding upon the history. I too was not here when this happened, but certainly it is a chance to do a do-over, and I believe they do owe us. So I proceed that we will get some of the help, if not most of what we need for this from the different pools of money. And all the folks that want to be added as co-sponsors, yes, thank you. I am very humbled that you are all coming on board to support this.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, Mr. President?
No, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I too would like to, thank you. And I too would like to be added as a co-sponsor. Do we have any questions from council members? I don't see any hands. Next, do we have anyone from the public who wishes to speak in on behalf of this resolution?
Oh, I do.
Okay, Mr. Kevin, you may begin.
Well, I'll start with, I was only 2 when President Kennedy dedicated I-95, and I don't think at that time it was done in necessarily malice, but I think Councilperson Loretta Walsh eloquently spoke about, and I don't need to repeat, the damage that was done to the city of Wilmington. So what has really pulled the city apart? I think we now have an opportunity to use that same space as a way to bring our city back together. The concept, I remember being at a meeting and listening to former Mayor Baker talk about the lid park over 95. And ever since then, I've had my thinking cap on and worked in every way I could to promote the idea. And it was really when I moved to Puerto Rico and I had a national park in my backyard, and I also live here in Wilmington, I was like, why don't we have a national park here in Delaware? And I remember speaking at the time that Senator Carper successfully did get the national monument during President Obama's administration, but we do have the first state national park now outside of the city of Wilmington. But the concept I'd like to propose, and I think the only way that we can really work to finance this, is to have a collaborative effort and to have a purpose for the park. So my concept I've been pushing is the first urban national park, and calling it Fun Park. And it would be a museum of sorts, a national park studying, and a museum to be a tourist attraction, to talk about the story of Wilmington, Delaware, and not just the city and how it was torn apart by the highway, but also starting from when we had the Dutch and the Swedes and the Underground Railroad and all the magnificent history that I do not think that we have marketed properly. The city of Philadelphia, north of us, has millions of people go to the city to learn about the Liberty Bell and the history of the United States. And I think that Delaware being the first state, and now having the first president from the state of Delaware, I think it'd be a great opportunity. And I'm so happy to see Maria and Loretta and all of the other council people supporting the idea of creating a park, and a national park over 95, that would not happen tomorrow, but maybe even also host the presidential library for Joe Biden, who knows? But it's an idea that needs to be promoted, and it's an idea that will help our environment, and it'll also have such an economic boost if we have a park that has a purpose. And that's pretty much all I have to say right now. We do have the United Neighbors group, which is a group that we've been painting the bridges. We've painted 2 of them already, and we're going to do the 8th Street Bridge next fall. And we have a Facebook group called Vision for I-95 Community Group. And last but not least, the University of Delaware, it's actually 2 things more. The University of Delaware did a study with their landscape architecture class last year, and it was very, very imaginative, but also in a lot of ways could really help with our corridor to address the ugliness that we now put up with. But Will Mapco has set aside $100,000 to look into this concept. So there is a little bit of financial support already with Will Mapco. And I look forward to helping in any way as a private citizen to make whatever happens, but let's make it happen. Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, you're muted.
Thank you. Is there, thank you, Mr. Kevin, for that piece of history. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak?
Hello.
Yes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Rodnisha Jenkins, and I am a current student at Delaware Tech Community College. I recently started following Wilmington City Council meetings to find out what's going on in the community. I am a Philadelphia native. I just moved here about 5 years ago. And with everything that's going on with the pandemic, I do feel like the city of Wilmington is very much divided. I've lived in a few parts of Delaware, and I moved to the city because I'm familiar with the city. And the 95, I don't know the history of the 95 divide, but everything that's going on now with the pandemic, I do think a national park would benefit everybody as a whole, something to bring all the communities together. I realized that Wilmington is divided by like the parts of the city, like the north side, the west side, the south side, and there's nothing to bring them together. Like there's no big recreation center or something to bring the people together to be able to meet each other. My children have been here for 5 years and don't know anyone, like nobody in the neighborhood, just maybe people on the block, but there's nothing to bring the people together. And with the pandemic shutting us all down, I do think that that should be looked at. And I appreciate every councilman and woman here that's willing to sponsor this. It's a great project, and I'm also following the project in Philadelphia as well. That's all I have to say.
Thank you so much for your words, for your support. Is there anyone else in the public that would like to speak, from the public that would like to speak? Going once, going twice. Okay, seeing no hands from the public, this resolution doesn't have to be voted out of committee, but it will
Madam,
be
may
on
I
the
make
agenda.
closing comments? Madam Chair?
Sure, I'm sorry. I'm
Yes,
sorry,
thank you.
Madam.
Thank you so much for everyone who spoke and for your support. Obviously, we're going to have to keep pushing this forward. The next steps would be really to also urge your legislators in Dover to push this, and then, of course, your federation and Congress. The last thing I do want to mention is I did talk about the air, but one of the things that you have in parks is grass and trees, and that's another way that you can really deal with the air pollution that we experience because of 95 going through our city and our high asthma rates. So the more trees that we're able to plant, the more green spaces that we have, the more that we can actually purify the air. So that's just the last thing that I wanted to comment. I thank everyone this evening for your thoughtful comments, for your support, and for the history. So let's move this forward. It'll be presented at the next council meeting in May, and I hope to hear from you then as well. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Councilwoman Maria. Okay, with nothing, any more comments from council members as it relates to the National Park Resolution, I would accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
It has been properly moved in second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
aye. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Everybody
you.
enjoy your evening.
Any opposed?
Yay.
Okay, motion carried. Thank you, motion carried. See y'all April the 15th. Y'all have a good evening. Thanks for all your time. Bye.
You did great. You exceeded the time by 15 seconds, but that's okay. Exclamation point. You were saying things of value.